Hi, I'm Anita Heiss, and my new book, Am I Black Enough for You, is available now for you to either pick up or download. In 2007, I read Alice Pung's Unpolished Gem as I was chairing a panel at the Byron Bay Writers' Festival titled It's Un-Australian, Writers Speak About National Identity. The story of Alice's Chinese-Cambodian family in Australia dealt with stereotypes she'd heard from kids at school, and the story included stereotypes about good migrants and bad migrants. But it was the first line of the book, "This story does not begin on a boat," and the later line, "There are no wild swans or falling leaves," that struck me immediately. I knew I had to write a story about Aboriginal Australia that didn't begin in the desert and didn't have didgeridoos playing in the background. In the 1990s, I also read Bori Monty Pry's memoir, Maybe Tomorrow, which included a scene at a school where a child asked, "When did you start being an Aborigine and how old were you when you started that?" So the idea and inspiration for my memoir on identity has a long history, and both Pung and Pryor influenced me in style and purpose to produce something that spoke in positive ways about the diversity of Aboriginal Australia today. What it means to be Aboriginal is personal to each individual. My identity is not simply about race. It's about my family history, it's about the history of Aboriginal Australia generally, it's about the ways that I have been shaped as a human being since birth. It's not about blood quantum or the colour of my skin or whether or not I work in an Aboriginal organisation, but I will say that all the work I do, paid and voluntary, is for the betterment of the Aboriginal community in some way. Aboriginality to me means solidarity with those in my community. I mean locally, nationally and internationally. I'm proud to be Wiradjuri, I'm proud to be Koori, and I'm proud I come from the oldest surviving culture in the world, and that I'm part of a thriving and evolving community today. It also means that I feel the suffering of those without the freedoms and the resources that I enjoy in the city, in the state of New South Wales. Overall, I think being Aboriginal is best summed up in the lyrics from the Brand New Day anthem, "There's nothing I would rather be." Well, it wasn't a decision I took lightly, nor on my own. I made my decision based on many conversations I had with my family, with my friends, and obviously with lawyers. In the end, I felt that I had no choice but to participate if I wanted to make real change to the way that the media portrayed and often persecuted Aboriginal people. It was a decision I made not so much for myself, but for all those who looked to me to stand up to the challenges presented through journalism that questioned the authenticity and the integrity of Aboriginal people based on the way we looked, how educated we are, where we lived and so forth. I had countless members of the Aboriginal community nationally urging and supporting me to fight the good fight, especially for our young people. My humiliation and my pain through the article in question had indeed been felt throughout the community. Most importantly, I was part of the case because I had to honour my family, living and dead, all of whom had been slighted. I had no idea about the complexity or the trauma that would be involved with participating in the case. It wasn't until I actually went to court that I came to understand why people kept saying to me I was brave and that I was courageous for standing up to Andrew Bolt. I'm glad I was part of the case though, because my participation will hopefully ensure that others in the future will be safe from the unnecessary and socially damaging persecution of Australians based on their race. It's also important to note that much of the support I received was also from non-Indigenous Australians expecting a shift in the type of media reporting that has become normal. I think that throughout history, Australia has had some very obvious national identities that many have accepted, people have admired and often related to. The convict and settler, the Anzac digger, the bronzed Aussie and even Crocodile Dundee, the man from the bush who heads to the big smoke. These were all acceptable by and large because they were white men mostly. But in recent years, with the rise of multiculturalism in Australia and many groups forging their own identity, there's a real struggle, I think, for one single identity that encapsulates our nation. This manifests itself around discussions on the Australian flag being problematic as a national symbol and January 26 being inappropriate for celebrating Australia Day, because both reflect an identity, but neither translate what it means to be Australian today. I think the nation is therefore slightly obsessed with identity because we don't have a clear-cut story that we can all celebrate. I hope that by unravelling my own 40+ years of life as an Aboriginal person living in the city, that the general Australian reading public and students in our schools and colleges come to appreciate without criticism or concern the diversity and complexity of Aboriginal identity in the 21st century, and that the power of self-identity and representation is a right as Australians that we should all enjoy.